Welcome to the Erotic Realm podcast, where we explore the psychology of darker desires. I'm Em, and if you're new here, welcome. I'm a psychosexuality nerd with a background in psychology, sociology, medical science, and Tantra. I'm also in a 24/7 college relationship, and I created this podcast with the mission of humanizing kinksters. Join me here for one-on-one, in-depth conversations as we explore the fascinating world of eroticism, one erotic realm at a time. If you love what we're doing here in the Erotic Realm, I'd like to ask you a quick favour. Can you follow and rate the show wherever you listen? It helps the show reach more people like you. And if you haven't yet, I'd love if you could subscribe to my Substack, Psychology of Desire. This is where I go even deeper into the science and symbolism of desire, archetypes, and erotic evolution. You'll get access to articles, unique surveys and research, and behind-the-scenes access to everything I'm building. Simply visit psychologyofdesire.substack.com. I'll see you there. And now, for today's episode. The following conversation explores the psychology of surrender, not as collapse or self-erasure, but as something that only becomes possible when safety, trust, and boundaries are firmly in place. Kinkerbell joins me to talk about what it means to be a sub-leaning switch who is deeply intentional about consent, emotional regulation, and non-degrading power exchange. In this episode, we explore how surrender feels in the body when it's chosen rather than demanded, and why erotic power depends on safety more than force. We also explore erotic writing as self-regulation, desire evolving later in life, and how clarity and structure can transform intimacy rather than restrict it. Drawing on trauma-informed psychology, this conversation reframes desire as something that unfolds in relationship, not performance. This episode is for anyone learning how to surrender without disappearing, and how erotic power can feel grounding rather than destabilising. Enjoy. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Erotic Realm. Today we are exploring the erotic realm of Kinkerbell. Welcome, Kinkerbell.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Thank you for being here. So before we step into your erotic realm, we just want to hear a little bit about who you are in your everyday life and what you enjoy doing as hobbies when you're not exploring your sexuality.
Well, I'm an artist and have a very creative life. I travel around Australia and a little bit around the world when I can, and have lots of adventures making art in nature. I'm involved in community organisations and activism, but most of the time I'm at home and just enjoying cooking and doing gardening and going out for walks in nature. I'm a grandparent. I have 2 little grandchildren and 2 bigger grandchildren. I've done all of those things pretty young, and I have a pretty full life.
That sounds lovely. Okay, so let's get into the fun stuff. If you had to sum up your sexuality and kinky self, how would you describe it currently?
It's very open, and I'm exploring lots at the moment. I'm 52, I'm about to turn 53. And that's kind of relevant because I'm having a sort of second teenagehood in this part of my life. I'm bisexual, identify as feminist, I've been described as sexually liberated, which always makes me think that there was some terrible thing before liberation, which there was for other people, but I've always been very open with my sexuality, never felt repressed. I'm a switch, sub-leaning most of the time, and generally have long-term relationships with men, and with women it can be more like, well, with most people, it's sort of sexuality can be an extension of friendship for me. So boundaries around sexuality and friendships are not as delineated as sort of most people. And so I don't really fit into boxes quite as much um, yeah, some of these labels don't really apply. But yeah, we'll go with some of those ones that I mentioned.
Okay, so you mentioned a second teenagehood. I have to ask, what do you mean by that? Can you explain a bit about what you're exploring in that space at the moment?
Yeah, sure. That's a bit of a story. So I've been kind of responsible for a lot of other people all my adult life, even since teenagehood, really. I had a child when I was 20. So I have also had older parents who passed away when I was in my 40s, and an aunt that I was also responsible for who passed away sadly last year, and a very old dog. So he
Mm,
got to 16 and a half. And so when he was dying and I knew that he was dying, I kind of had to have a light at the end of the tunnel. He was my faithful art companion. And I've
mm,
always had very open sexuality. I'm very sort of very sexual person with a high libido and very playful. But I've been in a very happy relationship, monogamous in practice, but open in theory, relationship for 15 years. And when it came to the end of sort of caring for other people and having all these responsibilities, I thought the only thing that's kind of, I've got to have this light at the end of the tunnel. And the only thing that could kind of keep me positive was thinking that I'll be able to travel once I don't have those responsibilities. And that was coupled with getting myself a little camper van and the idea of sort of playing just kind of went hand in hand with this. And my partner encouraged me to, go on the apps again and dating apps. And
mm,
so since the end of last year, I've been just chatting with people mostly, but I've started having other lovers in the last, I think, since March this year. I'm very cautious, but very playful as well. So I've had 3 different lovers in the last year, and well, less than a year, um, and exploring a whole range of different things with them. Whether it's just, I think of sexuality as being very unique to each situation and each combination of humans, rather than me kind of prescribing something to the relationship. I'm always curious to know what the nature of the relationship is and
mm,
what the other person's into and how we work together. So, yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
mm. So, what has that exploration been like for you? Does it feel like you're returning back to yourself, or do you feel like you're discovering new parts of yourself, or a bit of both, perhaps?
It's kind of like bringing it all together. Feels like a
Mm,
uniting of everything. And I went through a lot of trauma when I was young, in my early 20s, especially, and loss, and acquired a lifelong disability that's an invisible disability. But that it was very sort of disjointing, to put it mildly, in terms
mm,
of my sense of self, but also my sort of life narrative, or the narrative of my life, and how I hold a sense of who I am. And I feel like I've returned back to the essence. I feel like when we're teenagers, especially for women, I think before we're sexually active, this is a gross generalization, please excuse me, but I feel like you kind of know who you are, you know the essence of who you are on some level. And um, I'm a very empathic person, so I get very involved in other people's lives very easily. When I've got partners, that's certainly something that happened when I was young. And I had long-term relationships for a very long time, very early. And sort of being able to return to that sense of who I am. There was a year when I was 16 where I was very playful and had, uh, you know, explored my bisexuality and sexual relationships with friends. And I feel like I'm kind of returning to
mm,
that year, but it's when I'm 52, not
mm-hmm.
16. And so I feel like I'm kind of being true to myself, and yeah, weaving the whole story back together. It's a
Mm.
really, really beautiful, satisfying feeling. And it feels like I'm doing it purely for me and that I'm allowing myself to feel joy and pleasure for the first time in a very long time, guilt-free, no shame, no guilt. It's really gorgeous.
Mm.
Yeah,
That's really
so
powerful.
don't know if that answers your question.
It sure does. Sounds like a real reclamation. So thank you for sharing. So you
My
also
pleasure.
described yourself as a sub-leaning switch, but you're also very clear about what submission is not for you. So let's talk about it. How do you define submission on your own terms?
But I've had a bit of a journey with this, I guess. So one of the most significant relationships of my life was with a partner who I considered my soulmate, who tragically I lost when I was 23.
Mm.
Um, and I loved the sexuality that we had was amazing. It was completely equal. And I was raised in a very feminist household with an all-female household and never have had any sense of pressure around gender roles from sort of those close sources. Of course, I've felt societal pressure, as we all do,
Mm-hmm.
but I've always felt very free to, you know, um, build things with my hands and, do anything. I don't feel scared generally um, of men or threatened by them. Um, but with that partner, I had a very equal relationship. So there was no in sex, there was no sense of sub or dom. It was
Mm.
kind of those alien concepts. It was a very much a flow, and it was very spiritual and profound.
Mm.
But since he passed away, I've had one partner. We've had two relationships. We were together in our 20s and now together again later in
Ah,
life. And yeah,
what's that like?
it's kind of, it's great. It's a
Mm-hmm.
completely different relationship.
Mm.
Yeah, we're together when we were like 25 to 27, something like that. And now from like 36 to where we're at now.
Mm.
Um, Very different relationship. Yeah, same person, different relationship. So it's interesting
Mm.
that that can happen.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a very gentle person, very passive, very strong, but in a non-pushy way. And I'm kind of the opposite, not violent, I've got to say, but I am very passionate and very strong-willed and quite dominant as a kind of a character in my social
Mm-hmm.
life and external life. And I found that the kind of the yin and the yang, I think of it rather than sub-dom, I think of it as yin and yang. I never remember
Mm.
which is associated with masculine or feminine, but I think we all have masculine and feminine qualities, um, and that some people's sexuality is kind of resonates more with one of those vibes, I guess. And my partner, when in our sexuality, I discovered that when I would yield and be more, is it yin? I need to research
I
this.
think it is
Yang,
yin, yes.
yin,
Mm-hmm.
then he would be able to kind of come forward. He's a very reclusive person by nature, and so his
Mm.
energy would be able to sort of fill the space that I would make for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I discovered that and started thinking, well, how is that politically for me? My feminist, internal feminist was had problems with that, but the sexual internal sexual part of me had no problem with it and really enjoyed being able to relax and trust someone. I trust him completely. And after being through trauma and uh, violent loss, I guess, I found that being able to surrender rather than submit and trust someone completely and enjoy intense sensations with knowing that he will never intentionally hurt me is a really, really powerful, healing, beautiful thing and sends me
Mm.
into all sorts of spirals of ecstasy.
Mm.
And we explored all sorts of orgasmic, you know, play with him. He taught me how to about female ejaculation when I was in my 20s, and he has, helped kind of, I don't know, me explore that aspect of myself. I have now, I'm multi-orgasmic. I think I always have been, but
Mm.
cultivated that through that relationship. But yeah, when it comes to the sub-dom thing, I think there's another aspect which relates to trauma, which I know you've explored a lot in other podcasts, which is the healing aspects of submitting, or accepting, or desiring impact play, or intense sensation. So because of my PTSD, I do find that subspace very attractive for me, and I really enjoy that healing and release that comes with that. Don't do that all the time, but it's certainly something, I guess, surprisingly healing. I conceptually struggle with it, but I enjoy it as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, amazing. There's a lot to unpack there, and I'm going to go through a few of the themes that you were speaking about. For example, being a feminist and submissive, as well as the idea of trauma recovery in relationships. So, one of the traditions on the podcast is bringing in a quote, and today's quote actually touches on this trauma and recovery theme, and it's from Dr. Judith Herman, who's a psychiatrist whose work has shaped how we understand trauma and complex PTSD. And she has a book titled Trauma and Recovery. And she's emphasized that healing doesn't happen in isolation, it happens in safe relationships. And she wrote specifically, recovery can take place only within the context of relationships. It cannot occur in isolation. So I feel like you've spoken to this a little bit, but perhaps if you could just speak to it a little bit more about this idea that healing happens in relationship, and reflecting on your experience of erotic trust in your current relationship.
Mm. Yeah, it's a really interesting quote. I'm not absolutely, I think it's more of a question in my mind rather than a sort of outright agreement.
Mm.
Um, I I would suggest that, well, I saw a psychologist for a long time who's very well known in the PTSD world.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I gained from that experience was this idea that, um, I think it comes from Jung, that, the subconscious things that are embedded in the subconscious can only be transmuted or transformed through language. And so the idea of sort of having to use language to externalize things that live deep within us, such as trauma, will mean that it will come to the surface, and that it doesn't live it doesn't affect our behavior
Mm.
as much if we can release it that way. You obviously would know more about this than I do.
Oh, I'm
But
not sure.
um, okay, well, yeah, that was where he was coming from,
Mm-hmm.
with the sort of talking therapy aspect of the work that we did. And
Mm.
um, I question that too, because some people seem to be able to manage it without sort of talking therapy. And
Mm.
but he suggested that they have a sort of inner narrative, a
Mm-hmm.
conversation with themselves. So I wonder if trauma can be healed through relationship with ourselves, or
Mm.
relationship with nature, that we don't just have to have relationships with other people in which, they're a sort of they have a direct role. I think that definitely that can be very healing, but I suspect that the true change happens in relationship to yourself and in relationship to the world, and that humans are sort of players in that realm. But those roles that they play are not dependent on them themselves necessarily, if you understand where I'm coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had relationships with, yeah, my partner, that's very healing, but I may have been able to do some of that work on my own. So I think they're great catalysts for triggering and great
Mm-hmm.
catalysts for change. Sure,
So,
I'd
would
agree
you
with that.
say that your healing has started in your relationship with yourself and then has been explored further in your relationship with your partner? Or it's been a bit of a mix match?
Maybe the other way around.
Okay.
Maybe the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Yeah. Starts off with the other person maybe triggering something, but then
Mm.
I think you have to do your own processing internally, not necessarily with the other person.
Mm-hmm.
So I do a
Mm.
lot of journaling and a lot of thinking and deep thinking about things. And yeah, that's where the real work gets done,
Mm.
I think.
So with your journaling, do you do erotic writing as well as just everyday journaling?
I I do. I do
Mm-hmm.
indeed. In fact, I write a lot of poetry and some erotic poetry. I've got a book here that I started writing erotic. There you go. In August 1988, I
Oh
started
my
writing
goodness.
erotic poetry.
Wow.
And some of my accounts are in there. And that's actually been one of the most healing things this year. I've uh, been playing with a lot of younger men, which has been fabulous, and
Mm-hmm.
really enjoying the sense of healing the parts of me that I felt. Um, when I was younger, I didn't identify as being beautiful or, sexually attractive. And I'm finding that that's getting healed. Um, and thanks to these beautiful, very
Mm.
respectful, very, very good humans that I'm lucky enough to have found.
We
But
love that.
writing about, yeah, it's so good. Oh my God, it's so good. I think there's a lot more sort of awareness around consent and mental health stuff, especially for younger generations. It's great to see.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but what I've been doing is I've been writing. I've been writing those stories, true stories of my encounters, and I've always done this to some extent in writing poetry, but I'd never published it. I have been publishing them semi-secretly, but
Oh.
it's been really nice to do. Just on FetLife under a different profile name, but
Mm-hmm.
it's really lovely to have had that outlet. It's been very healing, and what I described before about kind of weaving my life back together.
Mm.
It has done that more than any one single thing I have ever done in nearly 30 years of therapy and counseling and all sorts of modalities of healing.
Mm.
Um,
Okay. Well,
Writing
yeah.
these accounts has been the best.
Mm-hmm. That's a big statement. So I'd love to pick apart that a little bit more. Why do you think writing has helped you with your healing so much? What does erotic writing give you that conversation alone doesn't?
A really good question. Um, I'm not sure that I think I'm finding the answer.
Mm.
I think there's something about, I was always curious about narrative therapy. It's
Mm-hmm.
a mode of counseling I never actually explored, I've never found a counselor who does that in particular. But the idea that, most of us sort of have a concept of our lives, like a narrative. And I've always had a very strong one. I've always known I was going to be an artist. I've got, I had a bit of a premonition that my partner would pass away the way he did when
Mm.
I was young. I have always had a sense of sort of, I don't know, a knowledge of the shape of my life, what the shape of my life might be, and being able to flesh it out and make it concrete and reframe things in a way that, adds meaning. I mean, we're humans, we're always trying to create meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to put down these accounts seems to also um, bypass this PTSD effect that I get, sort of memory blocks and gaps in my memory.
Mm.
And I've discovered that when I'm remembering an exchange or encounter with someone, I can go into the memory while I'm writing, and the dialogue comes back to me, and the detail comes back to me, and all these things are
Mm.
still, they come to the surface that have been in my subconscious. And because I went through such a traumatic event, I when I was 23, I think that a lot of that is sort of too much for me to process. cognitively still. And I suspect that writing about that will be ultimately a very healing thing when I can do it. And this has been sort of an entry point to do it. But it's been about me and about my sexual identity and about my body and about my pleasure. And it's so wonderful in a world where we're generally, as women, told that we should focus on other people's well-being. And
Mm-hmm.
I certainly have had that as a focus for most of my life, to be able to shift that focus to the center of my being and my experience of life
Mm.
is, and that's my sexual identity, my body, all those things is it's not just sort of healing, it's exciting
Mm.
and thrilling in a way I can't explain, but it, yeah, gives me meaning as well.
Mm-hmm. It's fascinating that you've been writing erotic poetry for so long. Did you say 1988?
Yeah.
Wow. So I'm curious,
Yeah, I was 15.
do you go back and look at those early poems and compare them to where you're at now? Can you see similarities or differences in them?
Well, I'm just flicking through the book now. I must admit I haven't. It has sat on the and the bed head for all these times. It stays very close to me. Oh, it's a little bit, it's a little bit of a gothic hearted, cliched bits in there, but this sort of brings back, yeah, those moments of, yeah, sharing, um, yeah, encounters with people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's actually quite beautiful. They're similar to my handwriting, similar. It looks like me. So, yeah, nice to
Are,
see. I'm the
are you
same person.
interested in sharing like a couple of lines of something at all? I'd be curious just to hear.
I am interested, but I didn't, anticipate it. So
That's
whether I
okay.
can find something that's any good is another question altogether. Um,
Okay, so have you managed to find something that you'd like to share? This is really exciting.
yeah, I found something from November the 8th, 1988.
Wow.
So I was 15, nearly 16. And I think I was probably ending my first relationship and exploring um, loving relationship, sex, and yeah, with women. So this is an ode to that.
Hmm.
I am thinking of beautiful things, of lace and candles, sensual music and soft rippled light, of spring nights and hazy days, of dappled shadows and Aurora's touch, of Klimt's gold and pebbled reflections, of waters flushed with silken white skin, washed on the cheek with the subtlest rose, of deep blue glass eyes clothed in velvet black, of soft, warm, moist lips dressed in plum blood, women's bodies dancing free, flowing and washing to sensual sounds, of thick, glimmering hair, cushioned petals, of hands caressing and further playing, of creamy pink nipples erect at the touch of another woman's dancing hand. That's it.
Wow. Okay, I had some tingles. I had some what's it called
Ooh,
when your hair stands up on your arms? Mm. Yes.
goosebumps.
Mhm.
Tingles is better.
Gorgeous. Thank you.
Oh, good. My pleasure.
Beautiful. So did you find something that you wanted to share from your writing that's more recent as well?
Yeah. Um, there's a couple of options. Um, it's a lot more crass, some of my more recent writing. Crass is such a bad word. It's, but
Crass is okay.
um, I'll read one that's complete and but quite brief, and then there's some from one of my favorites that I might indulge in and give you a few lines from, if that's all right. See what you
Please.
choose. Yes. So this is called A Twist. This is from May 2025. He held me, my wrists, his breath, a kiss, my body, a twisted mess, his hand on my breast. After a day of tears and long days away from him, he knows exactly how to bring me back down into my body. Pinned, disassociating, gently, he unwinds me, fingers skillfully stroking me back into being. His hands awaken me, labia, clit, ass, all of me. He gives me ecstasy after ecstasy. His longing rises as he pleasures me, his desire to give, his divine love for me. Entwined, he enters me, and we come together, finally.
Ear tingles from that one.
Excellent. And this is just a little excerpt from my favourite of my poems called Erotic Wake. I woke with your hands running down the length of my body, tracing the rolling form from the curve of my back to the rise of my arse, your loving waking me like a warm bath. My mouth opens and deeply I breathe in the cool air, the soft rain and the blue dawn light just penetrating the dreamy veil of my mind. I open to your loving like night does to daylight, the dry does to rain, and I soften to you, sighing. I remember being tossed. Sorry, this is a later part of the same poem.
Please.
I remember being tossed like a swimmer in a kind of fierce sea, myself over your face, pouring like the ocean all over you, flowing from an opening shell of me. Above you I rise, your hands thrust up to take my breasts in them. I feel like a goddess, some demonic, heroic deity of the sea, which both contains and gushes from me. Suddenly the waves knock me, arching backwards, lying across your length. For a moment I feel you pressed, breath filling your body beneath me, then another surge, and I am thrust up above you again. I feel you bury yourself in me as if a drowning man, desperate for the sea. That's it. It's a much longer poem, that one.
You definitely have a gift for writing. How does it feel to read the earlier writing and then something that's more recent?
Really interesting. I was saying to you off camera before that my first ever money I earned was actually from a poetry reading when I was 15. So it feels like exactly what I was describing before, sort of weaving my whole life back in together. And yeah, I really identify with that version of me from when I was 15. Really feels exactly like the same person I am now. Perhaps I have a different language and tone has been added to it, depth, texture, and experience. But yeah, it's nice to know I'm the same. In essence, that even through life's atrocities and heartache and everything that it does to you over considerable years, the the shining kind of light of who you are can still come through, or who I am is still coming through. It's a really nice feeling.
Yeah, isn't it amazing how writing something down can transport us back in time and show us these things? It's kind of magic, really.
Yeah, and remembering exactly where I was and who I was writing about that back then, and and now,
like time travel in a way.
Yeah. And I'm blessed to still know some of the people and the lovers that I had then are still my friends. So it's really
wonderful.
Yeah, really nice.
Do they know that you wrote a poem about them?
Probably, but yeah, I'm thinking I might be giving some poetry for Christmas this year.
Oh, that's a
Maybe
cool
some of
present.
the poems I've written to people.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to chat to you a little bit more about something that you mentioned earlier in terms of your feminism and how your submission there was tension between your feminism and your submission and the two different sides of
Mm,
yourself. So I found a
yeah.
paper that actually explores this, and it's called Feminist SM, A Contradiction in Terms. The paper
Hmm.
explores whether feminist values and consensual power exchange truly conflict, or whether that tension is something that society projects onto women. So rather than seeing submission as anti feminist, they argue that BDSM can be a site of agency, choice, and embodied
Mm.
autonomy. So this was probably one of the first research papers that really explored this. It was back in 2005. Now, in it, the authors speak about chosen power. So when you hear
Mm.
the idea that submission can be chosen power rather than imposed power, how does that land for you?
Yeah, that's great. It reminds me of recent discussions with my counselor about certain risk-taking behavior that I've indulged in when it comes to, connecting and having sex with people,
Mm-hmm.
and and how empowering that is. And she used the phrase, I think, chosen risk,
Mm-hmm.
and this idea that, when you've lived a life or had experience of being exposed to risk that you don't choose, that there's a great degree of agency when it comes to choosing risk. And I guess the same for choosing who we submit to and choosing who I give power to. I do not hand over power very easily or willingly at all. I'm very picky.
Mm.
And I think the men that I and women, that I would let sort of overpower me on some level, there's a great acknowledgement from them that that only happens because I let them,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore, the real power is still with me. So, in fact, maybe more so um, than ever. So, I have struggled with it, but I think kind of exposing myself to life and other sort of writing and your podcasts have been really helpful in that regard. I've really looked for a place to understand that a bit more.
Mm. Okay, wonderful. So would you say that exploring your eroticism and sexuality has reshaped how you understand feminism?
I don't think so, actually. I think
Mm.
feminism holds as a principle of equality that just overrides, it's a framework for viewing the world rather than, or for a position in the world that just states that everyone's equal. I do think that intellectualizing things as opposed to experiencing in the body is where the real conflict lies for me.
Mm.
I'm a very intellectual person on a lot of levels, but I'm also a very physical person in terms of I'm very present in my body. I meditate every day. I love sex. I can have a lot of sex. I can, I'm very present in that sex. I love sensation. I love, the air on my skin and being, the dirt under my fingernails if I'm gardening. I'm very grounded. So I find that that there can be a conflict between my intellect um, and my physical experience, and I tend to trust my body more than my mind.
Mm. Okay, so you're saying that the conflict was mostly in your mind and not your body when it came to feminism and submission. Is that right to say?
I guess it was between my body and my mind. So on the one
Mm.
hand, my mind goes, and there are still things that I can't tolerate, and
Mm-hmm.
I give those rules. So I hate any derogatory language about the body,
Mm-hmm.
and I won't let men, I ask for them not to use any derogatory terms.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, I'm not into that. I know other people enjoy that. But yeah, there's certain things that I can't tolerate that don't turn me on. And some of that I think is because of that sort of framework, but some of it might just be that I think some people get turned on by sort of reclaiming words that are associated with shame, but I don't have any or much shame as it is, so I don't have that. Doesn't work for me.
Mm.
Um, so there's a whole lot of things like that which are still in place from a feminist point of view, and then but the physical experience, if something turns me on, if someone says something to me and I go, hey, that breaks my rules, but hang on, that turned me on, there might be a conflict
Mm-hmm.
between the body and the mind. But I will listen to my body, um, unless it's doing some harm to me,
Mm-hmm.
emotionally or physically or intellectually. I am, and then that becomes a kind of conversation internally that I have to then address with that person, and that has happened quite a lot, really.
Mm.
It's an interesting one.
Mm-hmm. So you've mentioned that you've been sexual throughout your whole life and that you've been able to explore your sexuality to one degree or another quite freely throughout your life. And
Yeah.
you're in your 50s now, and there's this idea in society that women at some point are past it in their sexuality. We hear about it a lot. And
Mm.
that's something that a lot of older women have been coming on the podcast and speaking to and demonstrating that that's not necessarily the case. So, what would you say to younger kinksters and in particular women who may be fearful of aging and its impacts on their sexuality?
Yeah, it's a really interesting terrain. I'm glad that there's more people speaking about it. And I definitely encourage people to look into the sort of the more shamanic women craft angle
Mm,
on becoming coming into those later phases of femininity. I feel really young. I mean, I have, health issues and whatever, but I feel young. I think I look pretty young. I behave, I'm still that 15-year-old. I don't think you should be scared, and I don't think you should prescribe um, what you anticipate being, as in framed by this, stereotype of what an older person is. I always imagined in my 50s I'd have a van, and if I got, menopausal rage at my life, I would be able to go off into the desert and make art. And it's kind of what I've done. But I'm not having menopausal rage. I'm not menopausal yet, and I'm having lots of play, and I'm enjoying my body and other people's body, and apparently, still sexy, and that's amazing for me.
mm-hmm,
Not that I ever thought of myself as in that way, but I have had lovers in their 20s, and that they've found me sexy is exciting and affirming, and I'm enjoying my body and I'm enjoying my sexuality more than ever. I'm becoming more orgasmic, multi-layered kind of orgasms. There are negatives. I'm not going to pretend. Please talk to your women friends about it and your elders. Um, but I'm finding that really, the sexuality and sensuality is just blooming. I'm in this blooming, blossoming phase, not the other way around.
we love that. Do you
So
think
do not prescribe.
No, no, definitely not. Do you think
Yeah.
your meditation practice has something to do with your ability to explore multi orgasmic states?
I was thinking about this in relation to other discussions you've had. Definitely think it's an aspect. I've been meditating daily. No, I sort of don't do it according to anyone else's practice. I found my own way every day for just like 5 minutes to 15 minutes, maybe on a longer day. Um, just when I get out of a shower, I sit on the bed and look out the window at my garden. I don't sit cross-legged. I just do some breathing and some incarnating of my higher self into my
Mm,
body, maybe,
mm-hmm,
and look at the birds in the bird bath, and yeah, it definitely has enabled me to do the breathing pattern, which I think gets you into the beta state of mind. I
Mm.
don't know enough about this, um, but you probably do. And now I can do that at any time during the day. I
Mm-hmm.
suffer from a great deal of anxiety and, things like that as well. So it's hard at times. I can't do it. But yeah, throughout the day, while I'm gardening or when I'm chatting with someone, I may drop down into that state. So I can
Mm.
kind of do it at any point. But I think I've always been multi-orgasmic. I'm thinking about that from when I was started having sex at 15. I think I was actually experiencing it then without realizing it.
Mm.
And I've kind of learned to understand what I've experienced a lot more recently. So yeah, I think it does help with being present. I think it helps with not being self-conscious. I think I was reading your study on the female orgasm and that idea of being of attention and having your
Mm-hmm.
attention sort of inward rather than distracted by any outward influence. I'm a very visual person, and so when I'm having sex and when I'm orgasming, sometimes I can go into sort of other realms visually. Sometimes there's
Mm.
castles and
Oh,
landscapes open up before me. So yeah, there's all
wow.
sorts of stuff that happens. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Often it's just kind of a black void, and I'm having sensation and experiencing that. But it's all encompassing. I've always loved that. I've never had a problem doing that. Just yeah, very easily seduced by sensation and yeah, for some reason, even though in the rest of my life I might be self-conscious and anxious, once I'm sort of there, I'm completely there. It's a very, yeah, liberating feeling.
Okay, I'm fascinated by the visual landscapes that you just described. Is that
Yeah.
part of a fantasy that you're creating in your mind that leads to
No,
orgasm, or is it coming with the orgasm? It's like a product
no,
of it.
it's just like purely spontaneous, like
Wow.
almost like dream state, like
Mm.
but not, but it's landscape based generally, or yeah, literally sometimes castles and like kind of get built before my very eyes in the clouds.
Wow.
And yeah,
That's
it's
so
uh
interesting.
it's like a film clip, I guess, but it's not involving any people. It's just like a psychedelic
Mm.
landscape erupting in my visual field.
And that
I
happens
never
with
have the
orgasm?
lights on generally. Oh, it'll happen with sex. So I guess
Okay.
I have between sort of 30, I'll have 30 plus orgasms during a session.
Hmm.
So in that time frame, it'll happen, you know, while I guess it happens with surrender. It happens in that process of sort of, yeah, letting myself go into maybe it's subspace. I only kind of became aware of that idea recently. And it's like, yeah, I think that definitely is that place that I go to. And in there, it's like, yeah, it's like this yeah, this thinking that it's like a blackboard where where things bloom and emerge, and yeah, get these sometimes quite hilarious visuals.
That's
Can't
so
think of one, but I'm
fascinating.
pretty sure sometimes they're quite counter to the experience, but I can't remember the specifics of those.
Mm. Okay, I'm absolutely fascinated by that. That sounds really interesting. I would love to hear about them specifically when you have them. If you could write me one, I would love to read about it.
Sure, if it happens again, it hasn't happened for a while. I'm gonna look out for it for you.
Yeah, let's put it out there.
I obviously need to have a subspace experience again soon.
Yeah.
I have to arrange it just for that.
Yes, for science.
That's right. Yes, science.
Okay, I'm interested to see your answer to this question now because you mentioned the castles and these landscapes. As part of our conversation today, I asked you to bring along something to share, such as a quote, book, or a movie that's influenced your sexuality. Can you share with us what you've
Mm.
brought along today and how it shaped your erotic realm?
Yeah, well, there was my own little book of poetry that I was thinking of,
Ah, okay.
which I've already touched on, but there was also poetry by or writing by Anise Nin,
Mm.
was a great influence on me in my early 20s and kind of fits in with some of that stuff about language that I'm interested in. So, different ways of talking about body parts that aren't cliched and, um, sort of loaded with objectification and, you know, potentially sexist language, however you want to frame that, that people kind of, the cliches that people use nowadays. But that also occurred to me that the song Troy by Sinead O'Connor, if anyone has ever heard the extended mix, I bought it on record when I was 16, I think, 15 or 16. And it's incredible. It's very powerful, very dark, and very erotic. I'm trying to look it up while I talk to you, but because I don't recall all of the words, but it's a very intense extended mix.
Okay, I haven't heard that before.
It would be very, very hard to find, I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah.
And what was it about that you enjoyed? The darkness of it?
Yeah, very
Mm-hmm.
confronting. Yeah, she talks about pulling something out of her arsehole and what let me come, and
Oh,
this yeah, it's very very intense. See if I
okay. I
can
wasn't
find it.
expecting that.
Yeah. All of her work was very influential. If I had a hero, I don't say I have many heroes, but she would definitely be
Mm-hmm.
one.
Mm-hmm. I love it. So are you finding the
Now I'm going to have to
lyrics now?
research it to you and
Okay.
find it. I
Okay.
think I'm going to have to do it offline.
Yeah. No worries at all. I just wanted to ask a couple more questions about your experiences. So, for example, what do you wish more people understood about desire after trauma? So, you've spoken a little bit about working through PTSD. Uh, we don't quite often hear much about sexuality and trauma and how people work through any issues that might come up with that. What would you like to
Mm.
say about this topic, if anything?
Yeah, I could talk about this topic for a long time. I think I'm still trying to work it out myself.
Mm.
But um, again, when I was working with this psychologist, I was a bit uncomfortable talking about this topic with him. He wasn't very informed on sexuality and wasn't very progressive.
Mm.
But I found it really confronting that I do enjoy really extreme spanking and like some other extreme sensations. And so when I lost my partner and was injured in the event, I also felt like I sort of ascended with him. So I didn't feel like I was kind of here for a
Mm.
long time. I felt like I was seeing the world through a sort of a veil, as if I was on the other side. And I found that intense sensation was the only thing that sort of penetrated and let me kind of feel like I was in my body.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty intense when I was sort of in my 20s to discover that. Fortunately, I I was pretty open-minded, and I'm not scared when I'm not scared of things about myself, I guess, like that. I mean, I might be scared, but when I feel fear, I go to it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't run from it. So I think if you are experiencing loss or trauma or grief, um, or any anxiety or self-consciousness, those feelings can sort of push us away from our body and away from wanting to experience connection and sensuality and sex with other people because of fear. And I think if we can identify that the fear first, then we don't rob ourselves of those experiences, and we can let ourselves kind of go to them and discover, rediscover connecting with our bodies, with someone else's touch. It's amazing, the energetic exchange between humans in a sexual context is very profound, and
Mm-hmm.
with a safe, trustworthy partner should be very healing and awakening. So I think being able to face
face your own body, if your body contains sort of memories or trauma physically too, so that can be confronting. If people have injuries or are changed in some way physically by their experiences, and are scared of encountering the world or other people and other people's judgment, with the sort of partners that I've been very fortunate to find, I've been able to feel loved in the places where I have felt most sort of uncomfortable about myself and appreciated. And, that's really beautiful, beautiful feeling.
Mm.
So allowing yourself to um, connect with your body, even if I abstained from sex for 7 years at one point and just wanted to learn to love myself. I don't know that I would recommend this to anyone for that purpose, actually, but I did get more in touch with myself on some level, I think, and definitely if you can't face sharing sex and with someone else, it's something you have in your own
Hmm.
possession. It's your own body, and you can explore it for yourself
Mm.
infinitely without having to risk it with someone else. But I do encourage it because we're all here to play, and most people are really playing, I think, in sex and in creativity, in art, music, and
Yep.
theatre. They're all the spaces where we get to play, and I think adult humans benefit from that enormously.
Hmm. Yeah,
And so that was,
it sounds like BDSM has been, and in particular, impact play has been really healing for you. I'm curious, I didn't ask you, how did you learn about BDSM or come across the community?
Um, I don't know that I ever didn't know about it. It feels like
Ah.
when we were kids, I don't know, when we were kids, we used to play this vampire game, bite
Hmm.
each other's necks and stuff cherries in our mouths and make the blood drip down our faces. Sexuality is so entwined with who I am. I just can't identify beginnings or endings with it. I don't think I have a specific memory. I was very sexual when I was very young, so I don't. Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh, it might have been. I mean, we went to see the live performance of the Rocky Horror Show when I was 8. So,
Mm.
who knows? I might have been introduced to some concepts then.
Hmm. Hmm.
But yeah, don't actually know if that has any BDSM in it. But yeah, there's a lot in popular culture in the Generation X
Hmm.
that I am.
So you've been exploring for quite some time. It sounds like you've had many sexual adventures. I'm keen to hear from you about a peak erotic experience that you've had. What comes to mind when I ask this question? A time when you felt like your erotic realm was really explored or satisfied?
Mm. Oh my God, so many.
Cool.
That, but I've been thinking about this, and I don't know, three kind of things came to mind, and one sounds a bit woo-woo, a bit spiritual, but it's probably the most profound. Was when, making love with that partner that I lost way back in the day. Pardon me, the experience of I describe him as a soulmate, and the experience I had of spirits intertwining
Mm.
upon orgasm. When we were orgasming together, I actually, because I'm very visual and I see this sort of stuff, actually sort of saw our spirits twisting together in this double helix pattern.
Mm.
That was the most profound sexual experience I've ever had. But then I hooked up with a young guy in my camper van earlier this year in a very sort of out in nature kind of unusual situation that was very satisfying and very different, and was the first other guy I had actually had sex with in 20 years. So that was very
Wow.
profound on a completely different playful level. And then regular sex with my partner is amazing, mind-blowing, beautiful. Yeah, recent experiences with my young lover have been likewise really playful and fun, but in a completely different way. So yeah, this the what was notable for me was just how each one is such a different flavor. Well, one was powerful and spiritual, one is playful and joyful, one is, I go into the subspace and have this trust experience, and another was like a out of the blue, profound experience. So I think whether we are really in a sexual anarchy kind of relationship anarchy kind of thing is more descriptive of what we're doing, because each one of the relationships that I've had are really unique. Yeah. So sorry, I couldn't pick one. You got four.
That's okay. I love that you picked three, and I love how different and unique they all are. So thank you for sharing. Okay, so thinking about who you are today and your erotic self, how would you describe it if you had to describe it in one word? What would that word be and why?
It's the word wild.
Wild.
The word wild. Yes, now I can't say it. Yes, wild. Yeah, because I feel so free in my life and my sexuality. And yeah, I always have, but there's a wild side. I feel like I've been integrating the sort of dark side and shadow side of my life. And the animal side, is all permitted by the word wild. The idea of not being sort of bound by convention and society's expectations and the connection with nature, all it evokes is really true to me and what I'm experiencing.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your wild side. It's been a privilege to explore your erotic realm today, Kinkerbell.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm Em, and this has been the Erotic Realm podcast. Thank you for listening to the Erotic Realm. If this episode stirred something in you, please take a moment to follow the show, leave a rating, or write a review on wherever you're listening. It helps more people find the show and brings visibility to this deeper conversation about eroticism and self-understanding. I'd also like to invite you to dive deeper into the psychology of desire, including my writing, research, and upcoming courses over at psychologyofdesire.com. And if you want the full experience, join thousands of curious minds on my Substack at psychologyofdesire.substack.com. This is where I release the Psychology of Desire case files, behind-the-scenes thoughts, and intimate reflections every week, plus more. Until next time, stay curious, stay embodied, and keep exploring. Also, as always, stay perverted.